Do not move a muscle, because this fellow is a quality human being. Describing Dr Charlie Teo as a world-renowned neurosurgeon falls short of what this bloke has achieved. He's been invited to either speak or accept associate professorial roles at institutions in close to 40 nations. He became the only Australian neurosurgeon to be certified by a US medical board. For 3 consecutive years, he was voted the most trusted person in the country. And in addition to his foundation's fundraising and his exhausting surgical schedule, he also finds time to teach surgeons in developing countries. But he's had a rough 18 months with endless media scrutiny, a daughter-facing trial on driving charges and a broken marriage. What do they say? When it rains, it pours. But it seems as if he's through the other side. Charlie Teo is in lockdown and on the virtual couch this evening. Mate, great to see you on the program. Thank you very much for your time.
Oh, it's good to be here, Chris. Thank you very much.
This virus just seemingly won't go away. Put your medical perspective or your epidemiological hat on, and I know you're not one, but you've surely got an insight into this. Could we do more?
Look, I'm not an expert, Chris, but I have the fortune of speaking to neurosurgeons across the world probably on a daily basis, and I must say that when I start complaining and whinging and whining about situations in Australia and how they've politicised it and sort of sometimes the paradoxical approaches to the virus, I'm reminded every day that we're not as bad as the rest of the world, so I don't want to really complain. You know, I just spoke to my friend in Italy and he said it's worse than it's ever been, and India, he said the figures are much worse than they publish, and America, they haven't practiced elective neurosurgery for 12 months, and so, you know, Chris, we just can't complain here.
Yeah, that's very true. That was my next question to you. When we're in lockdowns and when we have restrictions, so too are we restricted to conduct surgery. How the hell do you make a call about what's urgent and what's not? Because what's not urgent and not dealt with can become fatal, can't it?
Yeah, no, look, I don't think people quite understand the collateral casualties, as they've called them, during COVID, and that is all the people who have died or become infirmed or sick with mental illness because of COVID. You know, I guess it's almost a weekly basis. I have to tell someone in another country that I can't operate, and unfortunately during lockdown, sometimes in another state that I can't operate on them, and they die. I mean, there are kids in Singapore right now waiting for me to operate on them that I just can't get there and they can't get here, and it's tragic that that's happening. But they're the collateral casualties, and believe me, they're happening on a daily basis.
As a child, were you destined to become a neurosurgeon, or was there a sliding doors moment that went from having an interest in medicine to neurosurgery?
Yeah, look, no, I hated neurosurgery as a medical student, and as a young registrar and intern, I thought it was unfortunately too demanding, both emotionally and physically. I thought that there was a lot unknown about neurosurgery that I just didn't quite understand, but I was thrust into it fortuitously because the neurosurgical registrar fell ill when I was doing paediatric surgery. And, you know, once I was exposed to it, the rest is history. I just loved it.
Did you gravitate towards paediatric surgery because of the terrible statistics about brain cancer on young kids?
Yeah, I did paediatric surgery because I just loved kids and I loved surgery. And then it was a natural progression to go from paediatric surgery to paediatric neurosurgery once I started neurosurgery. You know, it is incredibly tragic, Chris. I'm glad you brought that up because those figures need to be known. The figures are that in Australia and in all developed countries, brain cancer kills more children than any other disease. And yet it receives the least amount of funding, which is kind of crazy. So it's a figure that I'd like to throw around because I think if people realise, more effort would be put into trying to find a cure for brain cancer.
And I found it just amazing that this cancer is almost strategic and devious because, you've worked on the late Dr Chris O'Brien. He was a cancer doctor doing all he could to save lives. Jane McGrath, who luckily her legacy has been continued. Stan Zamanek, an outrageous radio man, a mutual friend of ours, but a guy who could raise money for charity like no one else. It's almost strategically and deviously going for people who are trying to fight it.
Yeah, it seems that way, but it is. It's non-discriminatory brain cancer. We don't know what causes it, so in fact we don't know how to avoid it, and it doesn't seem to respect any sort of socioeconomic background or class or body habitus or anything. I mean, really, it'd be good to know if it had something to do with a sedentary lifestyle or smoking or what we eat, but unfortunately, not enough research has been done into brain cancer to actually understand the epidemiology and the demographics of the disease. So it can affect anyone. You know, I just operated on a 3-year-old kid the other day, and there are older people. I mean, look, Chris, it's a terrible disease, and Chris OBrien was just one of the statistics. A lovely man who could have contributed so much more to this world, who was struck down really at the peak of his life by a disease that we could only buy him 3 years of life once he was diagnosed.
You have done so much in this field that could be described as revolutionary, but in particular forming a more international approach to research, because too often in other areas of medical research, you've got different countries and continents doing the same thing, right?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, we're kind of disjointed. Now, one of the worst things about, actually, it's not just brain cancer, but one of the worst things about all research is that we all build our own silos, and we don't talk to each other. And sometimes, studies are repeated across the world where if we'd only collaborated, we could have saved a lot of money and a lot of time. Part of my agenda is to try and get people to talk a bit more and be more open about their research and to collaborate and to try and find those scientists who are left field thinkers, the disruptive thinkers who aren't getting the funding that they deserve, and try and help those people in the quest.
Charlie, you caused a stir by walking away from your previous foundation to set up a foundation run on, you'd have to agree, a shoestring budget. Too often, a lot of the money donated to charity seems to be spent on administration, right?
Oh, it's worse than you even imagine, Chris. It's like, if you look at the ACNC website, the Australian Charities and Non-Profit Commission, it's mandatory to report your P&Ls if you make over $250,000 a year. And the sad thing is, if you look at all the P&Ls and all the stats on those charities, and there's thousands of them, many of them have overheads of more than 50, 55, 85, 90%, which means a lot of money is wasted on the running of the charity rather than the actual disease itself or the cause itself. So I pledged to change that narrative, whereby we'd be transparent about our P&Ls, people would know exactly where their money went, and we'd keep our overheads down below a certain percentage. I wanted to keep it below 10%. Unfortunately, I haven't succeeded, but we're certainly well below 20%, which means that we are world's best. And that's world's best across all of America and all of the continent, a European continent, where most charities run at least 55% or more.
Yeah, and you've got a great team of people with you as well. Which brings me to the last fundraising event that I attended, and we saw each other there. Who the hell donated $1 million at the end of the night?
I'd like to say that it was a genuine pledge, and I'd like to say that we've got the money in the coffers, but unfortunately, it hasn't been forthcoming. And I think the chap that pledged it may have been sort of overstretching himself a little bit and hasn't come up with the money. But despite that, we raised $1.1 million with a group of 200 high net worths, very generous, lovely people, all who supported the cause, the brain cancer cause. But that chap at the end who really did steal the limelight, unfortunately hasn't come through yet.
Well, we'll chase him up for you. You've also had a difficult 18 months. You've had, of course, a marriage breakdown to deal with. The certain sections of the media have gone to great lengths to bring you down. Then, of course, Nicola, she had that case dismissed by the DPP the other day on the basis of a medical syndrome known as autism. I'll get to that in a second. How have you fared after that 18 months? It couldn't have been easy picking up the paper for a few weeks there. Oh,
Chris, it was terrible. I thought I was going to die. I mean, I thought that my heart wouldn't cope because I was so stressed. And, you know, the stress of neurosurgery is bad enough as it is. And then, of course, as you know, I'm a controversial figure amongst my colleagues. So I've got these knives poised on my back waiting for me to fail. So you've got the difficulty of neurosurgery, you've got the difficulty of your colleagues wanting you to fail, and then, of course, you've got the media hounding you as well. It was bad. And I used to always say, you know, people say, how do you do it? How do you put up with the stress? And I used to say, well, it's all about a balanced life and a good family life. And then my family life, unfortunately, became disrupted, and Genevieve and I separated at first and then divorced later, and that was terrible. And then, of course, Nicola as well. And, yeah, no, I thought it was going to be quite lethal on me. But, you know, I sort of, put up with it. And at the end of the day, you know, Chris, I kept thinking, you know, I can't complain. I mean, I might have gone through a divorce and all the other media scrutiny, but at least I don't have brain cancer. And so the one sobering thought about being in the world of brain cancer is that you can always use that as your standard. And if you don't have brain cancer, life is pretty good.
Yeah, oh, what a great description. That's so true. We should all think about that from time to time. As for Nicola, a great relief for the family. It went on for so long. This diagnosis of autism, can you explain it to us? Because I've never heard of it before.
Yeah, you know, look, I don't want to discuss it really because I want to keep that as far away from me, Charlie Teo, as possible. But, you know, I think readers deserve some mention. So the mention is that Nicola's a beautiful girl who wasn't reckless in the accident, and that was shown pretty well right from the get-go. I think it was reported and people thought that she might have been on the phone because a lot of people are. And thankfully, they confiscated the phone and they looked at the records and found out that she actually wasn't on the phone. So, in other words, no phone, no speeding, no alcohol, no drugs, no priors, no recklessness. It was an accident. It was a terrible accident, and she feels bad about it. I feel bad about it. Everyone feels bad about it, but it was just an accident without recklessness.
Yeah.
Automatism is an act of automatic behaviour based on previous automatic behaviours. And I think, you know, we've all been through that situation. Well, not all of us, but some of us who've driven overseas and driven on the other side of the road when we come back to Australia. It's sometimes very difficult to actually drive on the right side of the roads unless you've got cues and, you know, like another car on the road. And if you're on the country road, then I guess it's one of those things where, you know, you can drift over to the other side of the road and not even be aware of it. In other words, automatic behaviour. I don't know the legal definition. I'm not quite sure what the medical definition is, but I do know that I've done it countless times where you do need cues to tell you that you're on the wrong side of the road.
Yeah, a great relief for the family. One quick one, what many people don't understand is that although you're a great lifesaver, you're a mad motorcyclist and you don't mind to go at a quick rate, right?
Well, I can't really say too open. I mean, I've got this terrible reputation of being honest to a fault, so I don't want to be too honest. But look, I do love my motorbikes, and some of them just can't go slow. I mean, you know, I try and put the brakes on, and I try not to accelerate too much, but they're just not designed to go below the speed limit. Yeah, I have a lovely Aprilia RSV4. It's a nice racing bike, and I take it out to Eastern Creek mostly, but occasionally I ride it on the road, public roads, and I probably shouldn't. In fact, I bought another little bike, Chris. I've got an MT-07, a little Yamaha, and it goes much slower, and it's much easier to stay below the speed limit.
That's good. We'll keep you in control on the roads, which is a great idea. Mate, thank you very much for your time and your openness, and I hope the last 18 months hasn't taken too much out of you because we need you and a lot of your patients need you. Thank you very much for being on the program.
No, thanks for your support, Chris, and the whole brain cancer community thanks you for your support. It's lovely.
Don't be silly. Thank you, Charlie. Dr Charlie Teo.